I'm not really ever fearful of being ripped off as a writer, like someone taking my written screenplay. I am fearful of being ripped off in the pitch room.
How did you get the pitch for SWAT?
So our agent called us up and said, hey, they're doing SWAT, the TV show from the 70s, over at Sony. And I'm like, oh, I actually like that show. And so we were very excited about it. And we went in and we said, so we had to come up with a pitch. Like, you're going into pitch now. And a pitch is difficult because you know that it's a casting call. And they're bringing a lot of writers in who are going to tell a story. How do I make my story stand out? So I remember we were eating Chinese food for lunch, and we got to talking about the movie The Warriors, John Carpenter film, one of my favorite films, low budget film about street gangs in all those gangs in New York City meet in Central Park. Somebody kills the leader of the street gang. They blame the Warriors, and the whole movie is the Warriors have to get from Central Park to Staten Island. And it's such a fun movie if you've never seen it. And I said, that's the beauty of it. We understood a SWAT team doesn't investigate anything. They're not detectives. They're protecting, or they're saving, or they're attacking. So what if we take the Warriors, and this goes back to my talking about finding movies that you like, and we use that theme. We said, okay. So we came in and we said, we came up with the idea that the world's worst bad guy is caught by complete chance, and LAPD has this habit of parading criminals in front of the cameras to show them off. At least they did in the 90s. And so we said, he puts out a bounty, and the next thing you know, it turns into the Warriors. So in our case, the Warriors, the gang, the Warriors, was the LAPD SWAT team. And all they had to do was take this bad guy criminal at the end of the first act and deliver him to LAX, where there was going to be a Con Air waiting for him. But along the way, every gang member from all over the country, there were kids with hand grenades. It was a crazy story. And it just was boom, 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 nonstop action. So we go in and we pitch this, and they're like, as soon as we said the bounty, the $100 million bounty, I could see in the eyes that this was sold. I could see Chris Lee, the studio executive. Dan Halstead was the producer who was working. Oliver Stone was involved at the time. But I could see in their eyes, you just know when you're pitching, when you've nailed, when you said the word, whatever it is, the magic word. At that point, I was like, this is happening. So we pitch it. They love it. They love it. Agent calls, yeah, this is going to happen. And then they call back and say, it's not going to happen. Why? They love it. They love it, but Oliver Stone is working with this other writer, and he's going to go with him. Well, what's his story? Well, he doesn't have a story. And then they said they might want to buy your story from you. I'm like, well, I don't want to sell them my story. I want to write this thing. I can write it. We know I can write it. We know we can write it. So that's good. So we say, you know what? Screw them. We're going to write this on spec. The story was completely original. We won't make it about a SWAT team. We made it about a FBI hostage rescue team, the HRT team. Same exact story. We write it on spec. We crank it out in 30 days. It's good. And we're like, well, this is a good spec script. We show it to our agents, and the same day the studio calls and said, yeah, Oliver Stone and this other writer had a falling out. They want you. I'm like, yeah, but we now have a spec script. Shouldn't that be worth more? And we all decided in the end we didn't really want to jerk them around too much because, bird in hand. You don't want to sit there and play too coy with the studio. Kind of wish we did. But ultimately, they bought our idea, which they were happy because it was now a first draft of a screenplay. We literally started with a script in hand, which we just changed it from hostage rescue team back to SWAT team. And we were on our way. So the script was going great. The development was going terrific. We were writing. Then I told you we got replaced. Then the internet demanded that we come back, which was wonderful. Then we came back, and then the studio said, we're going to make this film. We're going forward. We had offices. We were meeting with the production coordinators. They were designing vehicles. Like this was going to happen. And then, and this is the 90s now, mind you, we get a phone call. Arnold Schwarzenegger is interested in being in your film, in SWAT. I'm like, holy cow, Arnold. And so the problem is, when Arnold Schwarzenegger is interested in being in your film, everything stops. And so the studio said, we're just gonna slow down, and we're gonna let Arnold read this. And so Arnold is reading it, and he's reading it for months, and it goes nowhere. Then the studio says, all right, we're gonna hire this director, a guy named Marcus Nispel. Marcus made TV commercials. He's a prolific horror filmmaker. And then the studio fired him because they decided he couldn't get Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was not, with this unknown German filmmaker, we can't get Arnold Schwarzenegger. So he left. And the studio is waiting, and we're in the Arnold sweepstakes waiting. He goes to Warner Brothers, where he gets hired to make a movie called End of Days. And who does he get to star in End of Days? Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the guy that Sony fired because he couldn't get Arnold, ultimately got Arnold to go over to Warner Brothers to star in End of Days. I think Marcus did get fired off that movie ultimately, but it was just kind of comical to us because we waited. We now lost almost a half a year, maybe more. And that ground us to a slow halt. And then it took about 2 years to reboot to get back up and going again. So it's a long process. It was funny because we were involved in that for years, for years.
And what happened to the offices and all of that?
So when the Arnold sweepstakes ended and Arnold's gone, then they decided, well, first of all, now they didn't have a director. They had fired the director. And so they just basically, they let everyone go onto these people who were working production design, they just went on to their next film. And we were just told, don't worry, Arnold's still circling it, and basically we got caught in development hell. You've heard the term. And ultimately, it just means you're sitting on a shelf, you're waiting for a miracle to happen. I don't exactly even remember what miracle it was that brought it back to life, but it did ultimately come back to life. Yeah.
Do you know what percentage of films that are in development hell actually never make it out?
Oh, golly. I saw more of that when I was working at the studio. When I worked at Universal and I was an assistant, I think we had 300 films in development at any given time, and we were putting out maybe 8, 9 a year. So it was quite a bit. And development hell starts with, we're taking meetings every couple of weeks, to we'll probably meet next month, to they're not even returning your call. It's sitting on a shelf. In some cases, it turns around. Maybe as a writer, you can get it back. Maybe as the producer can take it elsewhere. That first script track down, it was moving. Oh, I forgot the time. Arnold got involved in that one. Oh, this is comical. So we're writing it, we get replaced, and I got rehired on that one too. We get replaced because they wanted a female writer to write for Jodie Foster, because I said it was sold with Jodie Foster as the female action lead. But my agent, I literally got replaced the week we sold it, and he goes, don't worry, this happens to everybody, and soon enough you'll be the guy replacing someone else. I'm like, okay, I still got paid, still had to do my draft, my revisions, did it. A couple months go by, the revision draft for Jodie is bad. Jodie drops out of the production. The studio calls us up and says, it's the same studio as SWAT, by the way. They call us up and this is before SWAT. Hey, can you come back in? We come back in. They go, so we'd love you to continue writing on this. They rehire us. We write more drafts. But then, and again, this was my first Arnold Schwarzenegger sweepstakes. SWAT was my second one. Arnold is interested in starring as a civil engineer whose kid is on the tunnel. And we're like, okay, but it's written for a woman. Well, we still want to pursue another woman. It could be, Sandra Bullock or whomever. So we were hired to write a male draft of Trackdown and a female draft of Trackdown. And each week we would hand in a male version and a female. Every time we did a revision, there was a male version and a female version. And there exists on a shelf at Sony Pictures a stack of Trackdown M and Trackdown F, male, female. Arnold circled that one, moved on to God knows what. That project went to the shelf and just died there. And as far as I know, Denise Denovi still owns it, or SWAT, or Sony owns it. It's an ancient film now. But that's what happens. It slows to a crawl, and then the calls stop happening, and it's rare that something comes back to life. Very rare.
Going back to your pitch on SWAT, once you pitch your ideas for an existing property, I don't want to say the word steal, but what's stopping the studio from using your ideas?
Oh, I got to tell you, I'm not really ever fearful of being ripped off as a writer, like someone taking my written screenplay. I am fearful of being ripped off in the pitch room, because there I'm just putting out ideas. I'm telling you ideas, and I know it's a cattle call, and there's several other writers coming in, and I know, and I've seen this in movies that were made that I pitched on, and I swear I said that in the room, and it showed up in their film. What can I do, right? I can't prove it. So it's nerve-wracking when you're going and pitching a really good original idea, and then they don't take it, and you're thinking to yourself, but I just told them a terrific idea. I can tell you an idea. I can't copyright an idea. I can copyright a screenplay, but I can't copyright an idea. So me telling you an idea, there's nothing necessarily to stop you from taking that idea and running with it. So pitches are dangerous. There is a little bit of a legal caveat there in that an implied buyer, which is a studio or a producer or an agent, technically can't take your idea and run with it because their job is to buy ideas. But it's a very gray area on who's going to sue a studio. So when I pitched that to the studio, we got to pitch it. It's the best idea we've ever had, right? Can't not pitch that idea. We're not going to get the job. But when we put it out there and then they didn't take it, now it was nerve-wracking. I was pleased to think that maybe they would buy it, but even that was unlikely. But I did have a situation. We were pitching an animated film to 20th Century Fox, Fox's animation arm, about a bull. We have a really fun pitch that never sold. It was called El Toro Bombito, and it was not Die Hard. It was Top Gun with a bull in the bullfighting arena. Long story short, we had this wonderful pitch, and we pitched it over there. And one of the elements of that story was that this bull, this kind of maverick bull, loses his horn. And that was a cool story beat, important if you know the story. Not important. They didn't buy the pitch. But later on, very shortly thereafter, they made the movie Ferdinand the Bull, which is a bull story that predates my story. It's a great little children's story that made for a fun movie. But in the movie, when that came out, the bull's horn was sheared off. That wasn't in the book. That wasn't in the Ferdinand book. And I thought to myself, these are the exact same people I pitched my story to about when the bull's horn gets sheared off and you're lesser than, when the bull with a broken horn is not as, and I was like, we pitched that line, we pitched that. Now, I'm not saying they stole it. This is not me making an accusation. More than likely, if it was taken inadvertently, like someone just said, hey, what if his horn fell off? And they heard it in a pitch. I don't think that most people are out there intentionally stealing things, but I think sometimes they come up with stuff that they think is their original idea, only to have heard it in a pitch from another writer. And when you're sitting in a room listening to 20 different people coming in with 20 different variations, and later on you've hired this writer, and then you say to him, hey, what if the bad guy offers $100 million, and you're thinking it's your totally original idea. You heard it. You're just not remembering hearing it. So again, not making accusations, but that's the danger of the pitch. That's the danger of putting your ideas out there. Much less dangerous to put a script out there because it's written. And that really is a very easy to prove. You got my script. We have a confirmation that you read my script and therefore you stole part of it. But you heard my pitch and you stole some of my pitch. I don't know of any writer that's ever been able to prove that. So when you're writing a screenplay, a property that belongs to a studio, SWAT is a good example, but it could be a TV show, movie, something that they're gonna make into a feature film. You might be the first writer and you might write that first screenplay, but it's always gonna be an adaptation of the property it was before, the TV show it was in the 70s. In the case of SWAT, it was a TV show in the 70s. So when we came in with our original draft, which I wrote as a spec script, and then the studio bought as a spec script technically to become their movie, it became a rewrite of their original property. And so at the end of the day, despite it being a wholly original idea, a wholly original screenplay, when you write a property that a studio exists, it's technically a rewrite. It no longer is your original story. So SWAT, as original as it was always going to be their property that we rewrote. Then when it comes to multiple writers in a screenplay, you have arbitration. And a lot of writers every writer will get involved, say, I want a piece of the action. I wrote the story. No, I wrote the story. I wrote more than you did. So we arbitrate. And some writers will say, well, I did a third draft, but I didn't read your draft or the one before that. The Writers Guild doesn't care. The Writers Guild arbitrates based upon what is in the final film, and then it goes to a committee of screenwriters who weigh out, how much of whose is in there. It never feels fair. I've never really felt like I won. I've usually gotten screwed in this process, but it is what it is. Unfortunately for us, when it came to SWAT, despite it being an original screenplay, it was never treated as such. And even the Writers Guild refused to look at it as an original screenplay that the studio had bought and then used for a property that pre-existed. As soon as you stick it into your franchise, it becomes a Die Hard 7, it's Die Hard, and it belongs to them. So that hurts for writers because ultimately that hurts your residuals. And it hurts your chain of title, how much you are involved in it. An original screenplay gives you far better residuals than the rewrite of a studio project.
But then an original screenplay is harder to sell.
Very hard to sell.
So so it's not like the easiest
No,
option.
difficult, yeah.
What can you tell us about the change in residuals from writing a theatrical movie versus writing a streaming movie?
It's huge, and it was kind of devastating. So theatrical movies, I've got 4 films that are produced. SWAT, Robots, Sniper 2, which actually paid very nicely, and 24 Hours to Live. So SWAT paid by far the best. Even though there's several writers that ultimately got credited, the residuals on that one were phenomenal, which makes you wonder if you were the only credited writer, you'd probably get paid ultimately about 6 times what you would have gotten paid just to write the script in residuals. That was a very successful studio film, theaters, rental, HBO, it had a great life. Sniper 2, very inexpensive film, only credited writers, really good residuals. Robots is animated. We don't get residuals for animated films. Thank you, Walt Disney. That goes back a long way, but writers don't get residuals for animated films. You get paid nicely to write it, but you don't get residuals. And then we were excited because the last film that got made was 24 Hours to Live. And when the producer said, hey, it's going to Netflix, I'm like, this is exciting. You're talking millions upon millions of people are going to see this. And, and knowing what I got paid in residuals for a long time, and continue to get paid for those other films, this is going to be massive. And so very excited, Ethan Hawke starring in the film, fun, very violent. And the film comes out and we get that first residual. You don't get your first residual check till the film is out. About a year, a couple months at least go by. And that first residual check comes and it was shockingly small. There has to be a mistake. This can't possibly, this is missing 2 zeros, not 1. And we go to our lawyer, we go to our agents, and I go to the Guild. I say, what is going on here? And basically, this is my introduction to the streaming world and to Netflix. And this is my introduction into, there's a whole different way of accounting. And we continue to get residuals that are shockingly small for that film. That film tracked, number 1, number 2 on Netflix for a couple of weeks. It did what every writer wants their film on Netflix to do. And I've seen writers talk about, you've made it when your film tracks highly on Netflix. And I would say, yes, I thought so, but not in the paycheck department. I was paid to write the film. I have no qualms with what I got paid. Everything was fine. It was the residuals where I'd grown to know that if you write a successful film, the residuals are going to be very nice and they're going to follow you for the rest of your life. So streaming is a different animal. I don't pretend to understand it. I will say, though, that it is hurting writers badly. And any writer I know who's taking residuals off their film that went directly to Netflix, and I'm assuming Amazon is the same, is finding a shockingly small number. Now, maybe they've never had a feature residual. Maybe they've never been lucky like I was to have a film that came from a major studio. So they don't know they're getting ripped off, but you're getting ripped off. And it's bad.
Well, this might be, did the writer's strike help at all, the recent one?
No, that's a good question. So the writer's strike didn't help me. It did. I know they've addressed streaming media, and even if there were changes to be made, it's never going to affect me. My deal is done. It's set. I doubt there's any retroactive anything. And I really couldn't understand what they claimed to gain out of the strike in that situation. I know one of the big things they were concerned about was AI, and down the line it's a concern, but my concern was, hey, you're ripping us off in the streaming residual department. That wasn't addressed. I've never been a fan of strikes. I understand the need for strikes. I understand that the corporations are making billions of dollars, but every time we go on strike, we stop working. And only a certain percentage of screenwriters are working, so when 90% of the screenwriters vote to go on strike, About 80% of them aren't working, so what do they care? Well, and not only a small percentage of screenwriters are making those gazillion-dollar deals where, so the rest of the working screenwriters go on strike and their projects get canned. It was a wonderful time. Hollywood loves the strikes because we get to cancel all those quasi-shelved projects, turn it around. It's a cleaning house moment. I'm not a fan of strikes, and I know that's sacrilege. I am very much the union guy. I'm very much the Democrat, but the writers' strikes to me have always proven to be somewhat ineffective and have hurt writers just as much as they've helped.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.